looked at the clock. I've heard more than enough. It's time. As he continued to speak fervently, I suggested that I wanted to bring this discussion to a close. He seemed to be aware that he got excited and talked too much, so he quickly accepted this.
今日は本当にありがとうございました。貴重なお話が聞けたと思います。
いえいえ、ウィッチハントの新しい仲間に若いお嬢さんを迎えできて本当に楽しかったです。今日は歌詞を変えてしまったのでお見せできなかった貴重な資料がいくつもあります。次の機会の時にはぜひそれをお見せしましょう。
So you keep your items to yourself.
ありがとう先生。最後に聞いてもいいですか？
はい、何でしょうか。
先生はどうして魔女に、いえ、神秘学や悪魔学に興味を？
それを言われると恥ずかしい。不思議な力が使えたなら意地悪なガキ大将にも負けないのに。という子供の頃の妄想がそのままライフワークになってしまっただけです。未知なる力への憧れというプリミティブな願望は今も昔も普遍的ですからな。
先生はなれるものなら魔女になりたいですか？思うがままに魔法を使ってみたいという夢を今も？
もちろんですとも。この年になりそういうものが実在しないと理屈では分かっていても、それでもなお空を飛んでみたい、鉄靴を黄金に変えてみたいという子供のような夢は忘れ学生たちにはどうかないんです。
I'm telling all of them. I'll bust into your fucking classroom with a goddamn megaphone and be like, "Hey y'all, listen up. I got some shit to tell you."
私が実は魔女だと言ったらお信じになります？
女は魔女であるというのが私のささやかな女性経験からの持論です。
Listen, I've dealt with some women in my time, and they're all witches. Like, okay, dude, go fucking jerk it to your anime pillow, alright? Angie snorted at the old professor, who must have been an earnest scholar with barely any experience with women.
そうそう。最後にもう一つだけ質問を。先生はメッセージボトルの実物をご覧になったことは？
ありますとも。
では、その筆跡についてもお詳しいですか？
もちろん、その道の専門家ではありませんが、メッセージボトルの筆跡に関してだけは、
What a coincidence that she's gonna pull out the fucking diary she has, right? And compare it and find it. Yeah, yeah. At that point, Angie set a book on the desk with a thud.
これは初めて見るものです。
He prided himself on his thorough knowledge of all literature related to Rokkenjima. He looked bewildered at this binding that he hadn't seen before. Ignoring him, Angie silently flipped through the pages, opened to one of them, and showed him. On that page was a handwritten paragraph beginning with, "To my beloved witch apprentice." And at the end, there was a signature in katakana that said, Beatrice.
それは
The instant he glanced at it, his face went pale. She knew the answer before asking, but Angie asked it out loud anyway.
このページに記されている文章の筆跡はメッセージボトルの筆跡と一致
So,
しますか？
whoever Beatrice truly is in this story, then she's the one responsible for sending the messages. Because if what I've gathered from various hints I've gotten throughout my playthrough thus far is that all these like demons and witches are representative of actual people doing actual things throughout this. Like obviously, the witches and whatnot aren't real, but they're representations of what truly happened there, and they're representations of the actual people who were actually there. It's kind of what I've picked up on. And so then, the big glaring question is, who is Beatrice? Because clearly Beatrice is not Beatrice. She's not herself. She's a representation of someone else who was there. It is what I'm led to believe anyway. Maybe I'm totally off the mark. Maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about. But that's where my mind leads me to believe. No, the fuck you will. The man stretched out his hand, but Ange pulled it back, as though telling him not to touch it with his filthy hands.
ありがとう。その反応だけで結構です。今日はありがとうございました。これ、お約束の謝礼です。
As she stood up, clutching Maria's diary, Ange carelessly tossed a wad of 10,000 yen notes wrapped with a strip of paper onto the table. As Ange turned her back to him, made to leave, the man raised his voice as though clinging to her. But Ange didn't stop walking.
お願いだ。その本は一体。謝礼はいらない。その本を見せてくれ。
私とあなたはウィッチハントの同志だけど、求める深さが違うみたい。あなたが楽しんでるのは猫箱の外側。
And she wants to know what's inside the box.
そして私が知りたいのは、猫箱の、そしてこの一冊は、その猫箱を開く鍵ね。あなたには過ぎてるわ。じゃあね。Goodbye, gentlemen. Have a nice day.
待ってくれ！スマレラさん！
His voice didn't reach her. She'd already joined up with the moccasin and gotten into the car. Interesting. Very interesting. Sure did.
最後の最後にね。やっぱりそうだった。メッセージボトルを記したのはベアトリーチェ本人だ。
そいつはクールだ。
クールだ。
魔女は実在するで決着で。
Oh no.
さあね。寝ていい？あのおしゃべり教授。きっと講義では自分の世界に入っちゃって寝ちゃう子族。
どうぞどうぞお休みを。
しかしうまくいくもんね。あいつ私のことスマデラだと最後まで信じてたわ。
The Sumidera family had set up a web beforehand around any people Ange might try to contact. They'd offer a reward to anyone who could take Ishirome Ange into custody if she appeared. Ange had foreseen that and had snatched it away. She called herself Sumidera, and after cleverly tricking the man by saying her own subordinates would set up an ambush, so he didn't need to worry about it, she had taken him outside. So when the Sumidera family pursuers reached the professor's house, there was no longer anyone there.
家人の話では午前中にスマデラを名乗る若い男女が訪れ、教授を連れ出したきりまだ帰宅しないそうです。裏をかかれた可能性が。
いけない子ね、エンジェちゃんは。
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about like when I was recapping the previous recording session, the whole, Ange escaping from that one fucking office building. And fucking jumping off of a fucking jumping out of a goddamn not parking lot, what's the fucking word I'm looking for? I don't fucking the parking space, whatever. She jumped out. She was saved by a former bodyguard of Ava that Ava had hired and then fired. Whatever. I know where I'm at now. And this bitch is her aunt, biologically. Kirie's sister. Yes.
あんなに名乗るのは嫌だと言ってたスマデラの名を気安く名乗ってくれちゃうなんて。そのうち教授もお戻りになるだろうさ。そしたらソチャでも振る舞わないとね。
了解しました。
私を手玉に取ったつもりかしら。やんちゃな子なんだから。
With a demonic look on her face, Kasumi violently stamped her heel. Oh. I'll teach you about my magic of origins. Wait, this is Maria.
No, I taught you before, right? And you used it before. Did you forget? You were also a witch apprentice, Angie, with your name into the mariage associé, weren't you?
私も魔女に加えてもらったんだっけ。
Interesting. I closed Maria's diary and flopped down on a very high class. Oh, okay, that's Angie. On a very high class looking bed. I'd slept deeply for a long time in the car, so it took longer than usual for drowsiness to set in, and I read the diary as I waited. This was a super expensive hotel in the city. Since it was often used by the rich and famous, they were very big on confidentiality. That made it very convenient for Angie to escape her pursuers. The idea that renegades should spend their nights hiding in cheap hotels is a commoner's way of thinking. To Angie, who possessed all the wealth of the Ushiromiya family, renegade life was comfortable indeed. Of course, even though he was a guard, Amakusa was the man and therefore in a separate room. Angie used the bedroom of the suite, and Amakusa lay on the sofa in the living room. According to Amakusa, the sofas here were more pleasant than his own beds had been recently. Poor guy. When I looked at the clock, I saw that it was almost 2 in the middle of the night. I'm still not getting sleepy. I sighed deeply. At that time, even though there was no wind, I had the feeling that Maria One-chan's diary fluttered. Maria. Then One-chan appeared. Her form was no longer the normal one I'd known. She was wearing the dress that Beatrice had given her after acknowledging her as a witch.
もう寝ないと明日が辛いよ。私も魔女なら魔法が使えるのよね。うん、使えるよ。教えてあげたでしょ、使い方。昔は使えたはずだよ。覚えてる。使いたくなった。寂しくなった？別に。毎日枕が違うくらいのことで辛くなんてならないわ。魔法の最初の一歩は寂しいからとか退屈だからとか、そのくらいのささやかな理由でいいの。眠くなるまでの暇つぶしだとしても。うん、エンジェがもう一度魔法のことを思い出してくれてマリアは嬉しい。
It's been quite a long time since I last used magic. At one point, with Maria One-chan's introduction, I touched a corner of it and opened the door a tiny bit. So, I should still remember that sensation.
今のエンジェはかなり魔法の力が衰えてる。基本に忠実じゃないと難しいよ。うん。四方を確認。静かな空間を確保。天草さんは？寝てるわ。
After opening the door to the living room a crack, I could see the blanket caterpillar on the sofa roll over in its sleep.
今のエンジェの弱い魔力では半魔法力の影響を受けすぎる。人の姿だけじゃない、声も音も気配さえもエンジェの魔法の邪魔をする。それらを完璧に立って古代魔術師たちがアトリエを閉ざして孤独を守ったように。覚えてるわ。人間の存在自体が魔法をゆえに人に魔法を見せるということそのものがとても高位な魔女の証だったわね。
Obtain a quiet space for yourself all alone. That should be enough to prepare a space to use magic.
次によりしろ。今のエンジェには自転車の補助輪、いえチェーンくらい大事。これは当然無理よね。
And she rubbed her own head. She wore hair accessories there with pink gems attached. They felt a little childish for Angie, but she never took them off, not even for a single day.
うん、今のエンジェにはとても無理。あの日から一日も休むことなく修行して、あるいは今頃は呼び出すことができたかもしれないね。はあ、今から修行したらどのくらいかかるの？魔女の修行は幼き日の1年が老いの10年と同じ価値があると言われてる。
That's nice.
相当の覚悟がいるよ。それこそ 後ろ身や金蔵くらいに。ピアノもバイオリンも魔法も幼い頃からの英才教育も大事なのね。
今のエンジェは初めて魔法を使えた時よりもその力が落ちている。無理をしないで基本に忠実に。
After stubbornly rubbing those things on my head one more time, I gave up. And I started fishing through the knapsack, looking for anything that might make a good vessel.
これならよりしろにはぴったりじゃない？
懐かしい。それならば今のエンジェでも召喚できると思うよ。それには今主がいない。エンジェが新しい主になるのも可能なはず。
One of the things that looked like good vessels, I took the one I thought might possess the strongest magical power, and set it on the side table near the bed with a clatter. It was a shady-looking, stake-shaped weapon with an occult design inscribed on it. Is that so? Is that so? Is that so? Uh-huh. I sense the obvious connection there, but I don't know what to do with that information. It was one of the 7 stakes of purgatory with which the witch used to offer sacrifices. When the police had been searching the family's possessions, they had collected a large amount of junk. After the investigation had finished, these had been politely returned to the Ishiramiya family. Finding something that I had seen in the pictures in Maria's diary, I took it home with me.
煉獄の七杭はもともと7本で一揃
Okay,
いだ
so
った。
the stakes as actual stakes were real, and several of them were killed with stakes, actual stakes. Interesting.
気の毒にね。今はもう彼女一本だけ。
Interesting. One-chan smiled, looking lonely. I pulled another book out of the knapsack. This was also old-fashioned, and you could tell that it was an occult book just by looking. But its contents were plain. It was one of Maria One-chan's elaborate notebooks. This wasn't a diary. This was a grimoire, which she had written as a witch. The 7 stakes of purgatory are Beatrice's furniture, created by her and employed only for her sake. But since Beatrice is also a witch of Mariage Sostre, they could be employed by Maria, a witch of the same alliance. For that reason, the method of summoning the 7 stakes of purgatory and how to handle them was written about in great detail in Marione-chan's grimoire. And, as another person with their name registered in that alliance, I was also permitted to employ them.
この杭は7姉妹の誰？
マリアの魔導書に彼女らの特徴が7杭の姉妹は名前を間違えられることをとても召喚する前によく彼女らの名前を思い出して。
A packed page told of the 7 stakes of purgatory. It described the 7 sisters in great detail. Yes. I think I memorized almost this entire page once in the past. The more I read it, the more I started to remember. By the pictures and characteristics written on the grimoire, I could tell that the stake in my hand was Mammon's stake. Aww. Why can't it be one of the ones I like? In the past, I hadn't had any stakes, so I'd summoned them without any vessel. So this was the first time I'd clearly seen any of the 7 stakes, let alone Mammon.
マモン、五女、7つの大罪の強欲を司る。すごい子よね。
強欲は向上心、上昇志向、生きる強さなども司る。決して悪い意味だけではないんだよ。口は悪いけどとても頑張り屋さんな子だし。
そうね。欲がないってことは、つまり生きてる理由がないってことだし。
For a while, I heightened my concentration and digested the information that was written about Mammon. The more the summoner knows about the target that's being summoned, the better. Knowledge is connected to magical power. I began to fill my head with knowledge about Mammon, raising a necessary amount of magical power for summoning.
魔導書ってちょっとだけ面白いわね。下手くそな小説を読むよりよっぽど面白いかもしれない。なんだか懐かしい気持ちになるわ。
魔導書はただ文字を読み取るだけじゃなく、行間から世界を膨らませたり、挿絵から世界を生み出したりと、様々な想像を要求されるの。生み出す力。これを持つエンジェになら、どんな本よりも魔導書は面白いはずだよ。エンジェになら理解できるってマリアはずっと知ってたもの。
マモンの知識、これで十分だと思うわ。うん。だいたい蘇った。やってみる。
しっかりね。いざという時に備えて私の護符を。今の君は同盟の条約に守られてない。マモンは少し喧嘩っ早いところがある子。あるいはまだ恨んでるかも。
She may still bear a grudge. Why? Because of what Kyrie did? Since Ange here is Kyrie's daughter, is Kyrie and Rudolph's daughter, and both of those two blasted one of the stakes, so
注意して。
うん。身につけることにする。
The Seven Six of Purgatory, as furniture, used to make sacrifices for a ceremony, were treated as beings inferior even to weapons. And that was only when compared to other demons. To humans, furniture is something to be feared. I fished through the knapsack again. I took out a bracelet charm with a scorpion medal that I'd gotten from Ryone-chan long ago and put it on my arm. In the past, I hadn't needed anything like this, but I need insurance.
大丈夫。それにはまだ十分な魔法防御が備わってる。それを身につけている限り絶対に大丈夫。
Ryone-chan's magic power, which had been specially put into this charm, had been enough to earn even Beatrice's admiration. While it may have looked like something cheap to a human who couldn't understand magic, its magical worth was incalculable.
さあさあ、罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七悔が一つ。強欲のマモン。
I focused my mind. I made the magic repelling toxin that filled my body 0.